let's go ahead and set up our first wireless network. So what we're going to be doing right now is we're going to go into our wireless router, and we're not worrying about any of the router stuff now. We're just going to be doing wireless. So what we're going to do is we're going to set up at least one, if not multiple SSIDs. We're going to be configuring which particular 802.11 standards we want to work with. This is an 802.11 AC, but he's also backwardly compatible with a lot of other stuff. And then the third thing we're going to do is encryption. So let's dive in. Now on this particular system, it's pretty straightforward. Now what I want you to look at is I've got, here it says wireless network, then it says wireless network, whoops, sorry, and I scroll down, and then it says it a third time. So you see that? I've got 1, 2, 3 radios on this. I've got one 2.4 gigahertz radio, and I've got 2 5 gigahertz radio, which allow me to get the best that you possibly can on 802.11 AC. So that gives us a lot of flexibility here. So let's go ahead and start configuring. First of all, let's start at the very top. My 2.4 gigahertz, and you can see it is backwardly compatible with 802.11b, G, and N. Number one, do I want to enable SSID broadcast? Basically what we're saying is, do you want people to be able to see that you have an SSID here? And generally the answer is always going to be yes. A lot of people will say that turning off SSID broadcast could be a good thing, because then the only way your clients can get to this guy is if someone tells them the information. That's actually not true anymore. It's actually fairly easy for almost any wireless client to find any wireless network. So the whole idea of turning off SSID broadcast might get you through an A+ question, but it's not that helpful in the real world. Now here's where we actually name the SSID. Now one of the things that's really important is that what you're looking at here is the SSID that comes by default from this particular router, and I don't like that. So I'm going to give it some other name. That is just, it helps me. Also, bad guys, when they see these default SSIDs, they know exactly what the device is, and it helps them figure out how to hack it if they want to. Now the next thing I want to do here is set the channel. Now in the 2.4 gigahertz band, we have a certain number of channels. Now what I like to do is set that to auto if at all possible. However, one of the things you might want to consider doing, even when you get up to this point, is doing what's known as a site survey. Now I use my little smartphone here, and I've got some applications. You know what, I'm going to pull this up on the screen. Hang on just a minute. Can we take a look at this? Great. All right. So what we're looking at here is a tool that I like to use that gives me an idea of what wireless networks are on my area right now. So you can see I've got a lot of stuff in channel 8 and 6. So I might want to avoid those channels. Now the nice part is, for most wireless networks, most of these routers will have this auto setting, which usually does a pretty good job. So I'm going to leave it as auto for right now. Now the next one is mode. What they're saying here in mode is they're saying, who do I want to backwardly support? So if I said, for example, up to 54 megabits per second, what I'm really saying is I'm only going to support up to 802.11g, which would be like a really terrible idea. The next one is up to 433 megabits per second. In this case, what they're talking about is I'm only supporting 802.11n. Generally, I'm going to leave it at defaults, which means I want full-blown 802.11 AC support. We're going to save the security for later. Now, let's take a look at these other 2 radios. So you can see I've got 2 5 gigahertz radios, and this is a feature you see only on more advanced 802.11 AC wireless devices. So there's a few things I can do here. First of all, I'm going to change the SSID. And I've got another one here. I'm going to change that too. Now I need to be careful here. So what I've really done on this particular device is I've got 2 802.11 AC radios that are able to go out and talk to people. But if I really want the power of 802.11 AC, and this is something you only see in 802.11 AC, you see this little option right here? This option says, I want even though I have 2 separate 5 gigahertz radios here, I want them to work as one. And if you want the really fast 802.11 AC, you turn that on. Now you'll notice one of the things that it did when I turned it on is it changed my SSIDs to the same SSID. Do you see that? So that's actually a good thing. For me with 802.11 AC, When I've got a lot of devices out there, I like to have one big super fast SSID. And let me tell you this, on my wireless home theater, I never have any stutters when I'm rocking along at close to 5 gigabits per second. All right, so let's keep looking here. So we've got the SSID set. Now look at the channel here. Now this is actually kind of unique to this one particular router. There are about a gazillion channels out there once you get into the 5 gigahertz range. The A+ is not going to test you on memorizing a whole bunch of channel numbers. But in this particular case, I don't have an auto setting. Kind of interesting, huh? So it's no big deal. I use that same site survey tool, and I went ahead and I looked in the 5 gigahertz range, and I found some channels that were unoccupied, and by sheer luck, the defaults here work out pretty good. And here you can see that I have different modes for old school 802.11n. Remember, N also runs on 5 gigahertz. Up to 1,000 megabits per second is going to let me run what they call a mixed, which is 802.11n and AC, and then up to 2165 on this particular one means 802.11 AC only. And that actually surprised me. I had to look that up in the documentation, that on this particular router, if I set that thing up to 2165, it actually doesn't support 802.11n. That could be an issue for some people. All right, so let's just keep going on. Now here's the other one. He's all pretty much set up, and he has his own 4 channels. Again, if you were going to be doing 802.11 AC on your own, you'd probably see an auto option. But again, I went through, I did a site survey, and I saw that that channel was open. So really all I have to do at this point, assuming I haven't plugged in any security, is just hit apply, and suddenly all of my clients are going to be able to see my wireless network. So that's actually pretty cool. But what we really want to do here is get some security going. So let's go ahead and apply some security. So we're going to go back up to the top. So in this case, what I want to do is under security options for my 2.4 gigahertz, I'm going to set it up. So you see we have a number of options here. So we've got good old WPA2 PSK. We've got WPA PSK TKIP and WPA2 PSK AES. So basically what they're saying is you've got regular old school WPA, you've got WPA2, these are all personal shared key, and then they have as the 4th option down here, WPA or WPA2 Enterprise. I'm going to go ahead and click on that. Now you'll see when I put this on, the only thing that's interesting, and you need to know this for the A+, is if I'm turning on Enterprise, really what it's saying is I have a Radius server. So if you take a look right here, you're going to see you'd have to type in the IP address for the Radius server. You also notice that the Radius server port is set to 1812. Radius always uses port number 1812, so make sure you know those. Unless you're going to be taking Network Plus or even more advanced, you're not going to be seeing any questions about Enterprise. But what you probably will do is set it up to WPA2 PSK. So right here is the key. Now this is the default key that comes with the router. Man, you want to talk about something you want to change. This is a really, really important thing to do, is to change your default password. So I'm going to type in something else here. I'm a big believer when you're using WPA2 PSK to always use long passwords, just because WPA2 is hackable, but it's very difficult to hack it when you use really, really long passwords. So that's just my own personal choice there. On the A+, they might be saying things like make them complex. Sure, nothing wrong with complex passwords, but a long password that's easy to remember is always harder to break than a short, complex password. Now, I've got 2 different SSIDs running right now, one on my 2.4 and then the 2 combined ones. So just for now, I'm going to go ahead and leave those, but I do need to get a password on here. So right now it's still set to WPA2 PSK. And you'll see that on the second one, because they're tied together, I don't have any settings. Well, that's good, because everything I do on the first one is going to get both radios working together. And all I would have to do now is hit apply, and this little box is going to be passing out 2 separate SSIDs, both using WPA2 encryption. And that should be all I need to do, and we've got a pretty good setup.